Welcome to the Case For. I am Matt Campobasso. I'm your host. I'm also a massive Bears fan, which is going to factor into why we're here today. Today, I know exactly what I'm doing. I am willingly walking into oncoming traffic when it comes to football discourse. The case I'm about to make with a straight face is for why the Bears are a better football organization than the Green Bay Packers. Yeah, I know any Packers fans that are listening just sat up straighter. I know the all-time series stats. I know about the 4 Lombardi trophies sitting up there in Green Bay. And still, I'm making the case. Not because the Bears have been lighting the football world on fire over the last 3 decades. They haven't. Not because the Bears-Packers recent head-to-head record looks all that good in favor of the Bears. It does not. I'm making this case because better team, better organization is bigger than the last decade's scoreboard. This is about soul. It's about history. It's about identity and culture and what your team actually says about where you come from. And yeah, it's also about the fact that I'm a Bears fan. Let's not pretend, for purposes of this episode, that objectivity lives here. So today, we're going to do this like we always do here on The Case For. I'm going to lay out an opening statement. We're going to walk through a few big arguments in support of my statement. You can call them exhibits if you'd like. I'll acknowledge the obvious counter arguments, and then we're going to close and arrive at a verdict that shockingly, spoiler alert, will favor Chicago. So Packers fans, you're welcome in this courtroom. You can yell at your speakers, that's fine. Bears fans, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Let me start by defining the word that's going to drive people the craziest here, better, right? If we define better as more Super Bowl trophies, recent head-to-head dominance, the last 30 years of quarterback play, yeah, the Packers win that case easily. They have had this absolutely ridiculous run. We can go back to Bart Starr. Then there's a short gap. Then Brett Favre. Then Aaron Rodgers. Then Jordan Love. Like, don't mind me. I'm just here to keep the Bears fans and the team miserable. If that's the whole examination, Green Bay passes with honors. But actually, that's not the exam I'm giving. When I say better football organization, I mean, which team feels more like the beating heart of NFL history? Which organization reflects what this league was built on? Toughness, defense, working class identity. Which franchise would you pick if you were explaining football to someone from another planet who didn't own a cheesehead or a foam claw? That's a different test. And on that test, I think the Bears have the stronger case. So, my first piece of evidence, the Chicago Bears as the NFL's skeleton. If the NFL had bones, the Chicago Bears would be part of that skeleton. This is one of the charter franchises. Born in 1919 as the Decatur Staleys, they moved to Chicago in 1921, playing this game before the NFL was the NFL. They are not just in the league's history, they are the league's history. The Bears have 9 total league championships, 8 pre-Super Bowl NFL titles plus Super Bowl 20, the most Hall of Famers of any team in the NFL, and the most retired jersey numbers. When you think of classic old school black and white photo football, you don't picture Aaron Rodgers coming out of a darkness retreat to throw a back shoulder fade. You picture George Halas in a fedora, Dick Butkus snarling in the middle of the field, Gale Sayers slicing through mud like he's running on a different surface than everybody else, and Walter Payton, the one and only sweetness, high-stepping with that perfect blend of grace and violence. The Bears are the museum wing where you go, oh, this is what football is. Now, the Packers absolutely live in that wing too. They've got titles on titles. Vince Lombardi's name is literally on the trophy. I'm not pretending they're some expansion team. But the Bears, they have this uniquely mythical feel. Monsters, weather, smash-mouth defense. Soldier Field on a miserable day where the wind is trying to kill you and the score might be 10-6, and it still feels like church. In the courtroom of football history, the Bears are not another team. They're part of the architecture. That's my first argument. The Bears are not currently the best team, although they're trending in the right direction, but they are the better representation of what pro football is at its core. My second argument focuses on defense, toughness, and what I'll call real football. Let's talk about identity. If I say Packers, what comes to mind? Most people think quarterbacks. Starr, Favre, Rodgers, Jordan Love now trying to keep that torch lit. Brett Favre was the original, no, yes, quarterback. He threw touchdowns, interceptions, retirement announcements, text messages, all with that same enthusiasm. Then Aaron Rodgers comes along, like the zodiac sign version of a quarterback, MVP seasons, ayahuasca retreats, darkness caves, and press conferences where you're not sure if you're hearing about football or a TED Talk on personal sovereignty. The Packers are an offense-first organization. So when I say Bears, what comes to mind? Defense, physicality, hits that would be illegal, finable, and probably cause a league memo now. We're talking the 4-6 defense, Mike Singletary's eyes, the 85 Bears, still to this day, arguably the most feared defense in NFL history, giving up 10 points total in the playoffs in 1985 and absolutely erasing the Patriots in Super Bowl 20. The Bears brand, it's toughness. It's cold, it's muddy, it's ugly, and that's the point. If football is, at its heart, a game about physical will, who can impose themselves on the other side of the ball, the Bears are the better avatar of what this sport has always claimed to be. And I'd argue that in the long arc of football history, when people romanticize the game, they romanticize Bears-type football more than they do Packers-type efficiency. You don't have to like that, but tell me you haven't heard Monsters of the Midway more times than you've heard most accurate passer rating in the NFC North. Third argument, suffering, character, and the Caleb Williams era. Let's talk about something the Bears fans know deeply, suffering. The Packers have had 3 decades of Hall of Fame quarterback play. Brett Favre, the human roller coaster. You never knew if you were getting a miracle throw, a brutal pick, or a Wrangler commercial. Aaron Rodgers, 4-time MVP, walking conspiracy subreddit, still casually dropping dimes while explaining his vaccination status. And now Jordan Love showing up like the sequel that nobody asked for, but somehow is still pretty good. Meanwhile, in Chicago, the quarterback position has been basically an escape room we've never solved. Bears fans have lived through, this is our guy. No, this is our guy. Okay, but this one's different. And it's been a pain. Years of game manager talk, years of if the defense can hold them to 13. From an on-field success standpoint, Green Bay has had a smoother ride. But here is the spiritual argument. Which fan base has developed more character? One fan base has had the stability, success, 2 legendary quarterbacks back-to-back, and consistent playoff presence. The other has learned how to watch blown leads, double doinks, quarterback chaos, and wasted defenses, and still show up next Sunday in a parka in negative temperatures. Who are you calling if your life falls apart and you need someone who understands resilience? The guy whose team has had a top 10 offense for 20 years? Or the guy who could tell you exactly where he was when Cody Parkey hit 4 uprights? There is a kind of depth that comes from not getting what you want, and Bears fans know it well. The organization knows it. The city of Chicago knows it. Chicago football, even when it's bad, and it's often bad, feels real. It feels like life. You show up, you hope, you get disappointed, you get a little miracle, you get disappointed again, and you keep loving them anyway. And now, finally, we're in the Caleb Williams era. We've got a number 1 overall pick at quarterback. A guy who could actually make throws, extend plays with his legs, and doesn't look like he's just trying to survive any given Sunday. And we've got some real weapons around him. We have an offense that on its best days looks like something from this century. So all of that suffering, all of those, this might be the guy false starts, they make this moment different. Packers fans are terrified at the question, what happens when the quarterback magic runs out? Bears fans are asking, what happens if ours is just beginning? That's not just character, that's character plus hope. And that's a dangerous combination in a good way. Let's talk about argument number 4. Let's talk about the city, the culture, and who you're really cheering for. Here's another thing I'll put on the record. The Bears are not just a team. They are an extension of Chicago. Big, flawed, loud, working-class city at its core. Absolutely obsessed with its own sports history. When you cheer for the Bears, you're not just cheering for a helmet, you're cheering for the lake wind, the guy grilling in a blizzard, the city that will still talk about the 1985 Bears like it happened 3 weeks ago. The shoulder-to-shoulder L rides, the people who go to Soldier Field when it's 9 degrees and windy and call that nice football weather. The Packers are tied to a place too, Green Bay, Wisconsin, publicly owned, a really unique tradition. That's awesome. I'm not taking that away. But Chicago is a global city, and the Bears, when they're right, it feels like this perfect fusion of local grit and national mythology. If I'm telling a non-fan, pick a team that reflects everything beautiful and infuriating about American cities, I'm pointing them to the Bears. And in a weird way, the Bears being flawed and not always successful makes them feel more like real life in a real city. You're not buying stock in a perfectly run operation. You're buying into a relationship. You take the good with the bad. So now, before Packers fans start drafting long comments, let me stipulate on the record. Green Bay leads the all-time series. The Packers have more championships. Since the early 90s, the rivalry has been lopsided. All true. And if this were my case for the more successful modern franchise, I'd lose. I'd rest my case and I'd walk out. But that's not today's case. Today's case is which football organization is the better embodiment of what this sport means. And on that question, I think the scales tilt toward Chicago because the Bears gave the league some of its most iconic players and defenses. They embody a style of football people still romanticize. Defense, weather, physicality. Their fans have stayed through failure and frustration in a way that speaks to incredibly deep loyalty. The organization is woven into a story of a great American city in a way that feels bigger than wins and losses. And now, with Caleb Williams, they finally have a quarterback who looks like he belongs in the same conversation as those guys up north, just without Wrangler ads or darkness retreats. Yet. The Packers have more rings, the Bears have more myth. And football, maybe more than any other sport, runs on myth. So why does any of this matter, other than because of tonight's Bears-Packers game at Soldier Field? Well, it's not just to stir the pot, although I'm absolutely doing that. I think it matters because how we talk about better in sports is how we end up talking about better in life. If better always means winning trophies, then we're always going to confuse success with value. We're going to write off the people who struggle, the years that felt like failure, the teams that didn't win but still meant everything to the city. The Bears are proof that being worth loving is not the same thing as having the best record. Sometimes the thing that shapes you most is not the dynasty. It's the team that breaks your heart and keeps you coming back. So yeah, the Packers have had more modern wins. They've had the quarterbacks. They've had the era. But if I have to choose the organization that to me feels like football, the history, the toughness, the defense, the flawed beauty of the sport, I'm taking the Chicago Bears. Not because they've been the best lately, but because they've been the most human for the longest. They are messy, they are historic, they are occasionally brilliant, they are often frustrating, but they are absolutely essential to what the NFL is. And now, with a real shot at a franchise quarterback in Caleb Williams and a legitimate NFL head coach in Ben Johnson, there is this sense that maybe, just maybe, the next chapter of Bears history doesn't have to be about what went wrong. Maybe it's about what finally went right. So, here on the case for, focusing on the narrow question of, are the Chicago Bears a better football organization than the Green Bay Packers? Not in wins and losses, but in what they represent about the sport. I find for the Bears. Packers fans, you can appeal. Bears fans, you can laugh. And the rest of you, you can just enjoy watching this rivalry continue because there is nothing else in professional sports quite like it. I'm Matt Campobasso. This has been the case for Bear Down.